as an entrepreneur, you can get stuck in the day-to-day of things in as much detail as you can, as you're able to, but that will preclude you from growing the business because you're unable to take a step back, have a bird's eye view of how things are working, and then make strategic decisions. You know, it's like we're humans. We grow, we develop, we make mistakes, we regret them, we do things we shouldn't have done. So it's just a normal part of growth. A lot of people in this industry are attracted by, I want to open in central London and Soho, in this area and that area. I want to have that location, that corner site. But if the numbers don't make sense, it's not worth pursuing things for the ego. One of the key things is just being more disciplined with my time, as in not to just let things morph into each other. Like,
Hello everyone and welcome to a new video from Careers Talks, where I chat with professionals about their daily job responsibilities, their career paths, and how they manage to land their jobs. My new guest Fathallah completed his bachelor's in economics from the University of Bath. He then did his master's in finance at Imperial College Business School. He managed to land a private equity job after his graduation at Campbell Lutyens in London. A year in his job, Fathallah decided to take a big risk, open his own coffee house in London, Guillam Coffee House. Guillam is now thriving in London and is open in 4 different prime locations. In this video, Fathallah will walk us through his career journey and how he decided to leave a stable private equity job to open his own coffee house. I hope you'll find this video insightful. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode from Careers Talks. Today I have Fathallah. Fathallah came to the UK when he was 16. You did 2 years of high school here, or college as they call it in the UK. You did your bachelor's at the University of Bath. You did economics and then you did your master's at Imperial College of Business.
yeah.
And then you did a couple of internships during university in investment banking, sales and trading. And then you started in a private equity job. You worked there for around a year and a half, and then you started your own coffee shop or coffee house. So I think in this episode we'll focus on your career journey, as in shifting from a corporate career to an entrepreneurial career. What were the challenges? We're going to touch a bit on how you started Guillam, the challenges in terms of starting a business, starting a coffee shop, and then also a bit on the personal aspect of starting a business, if that makes sense. So also want to thank you for having me in your place. It's an amazing place.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you for
really
making
like
the trip.
apartment. No worries. First of all, how are you doing?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm good. It's
Sorry,
getting
you're
warmer.
sweating, because I made you make the trip over.
No
in
worries.
this warm weather.
I enjoyed it.
But appreciate it.
No, of course. Fathallah, if you can tell us a bit in terms of, you finished university as a graduate. You've seen what it is like in the corporate aspect in terms of like your career there, and then you went to open a coffee shop. Can you walk me through that journey briefly, with a focus on that decision to say, I'm done with the finance sector, I'm done with private equity, and I want to start my own business?
Yeah.
Before, why a coffee shop, but just that decision a bit, and what
Yeah.
happened throughout these different corporate experiences, let's say.
Of course, I think there's a very important context to a lot of these decisions. And I mean, I'm giving this caveat because a lot of people say, okay, I wanted to start my business and I wanted to do something, but it's really important to make that decision in a comprehensive way.
Yes.
As in not be in a job and just say, I don't want to work for anyone else, I just want to start my own thing. I think that's one of the silliest reasons people start something.
Yeah.
And I hear it a lot, but I just don't think it makes much sense. So I, during my time at Bath, I did an economics degree with a sandwich placement. So I could work for a year for my 3rd year, and then go back, finish my last year, and then decide what I wanted to do. So for that placement, I worked at Morgan Stanley in their sales and trading division, and I really enjoyed it to a large extent. It was great. It was such a good way to get exposure to what it's like to work in a company, especially a company like Morgan Stanley, huge, big institution. And so after that year, I think I sort of got a sense of what it was like to work in sales and trading, or broadly, as I was there, I met a lot of people from different teams, spoke to them, and sort of understood the different roles within sales and trading. Because saying sales and trading is like saying engineering. You know, there's so many different jobs within that area. And I knew I wanted to focus more on working directly with companies. So rather than working on their stocks or debt or derivatives, to focus more on working with the businesses. So I thought, okay, it's time to maybe consider a different area in investment banking, which is IBD, which is sort of M&A, IPOs, or other areas within that field. So I went back to Bath, finished my last year. I also wanted to get more finance knowledge because surprisingly, I didn't know that much about finance. I tried to focus my undergraduate degree on just pure economics. I avoided any finance courses. And so applied to Imperial College London. They have a business school in South Kensington campus. And the MSc finance degree there is very highly regarded. It's very technical. And in that degree, I wanted to, again, just focus on finance, nothing else, specifically on corporate finance. So I did that. I had that experience, got a summer internship in the M&A team at Nomura, which was a really interesting experience. I really enjoyed the work. I really enjoyed the type of stuff we did. But I would say, unfortunately, I was in a team that was it was not the best, let's put it that way. And so the work was really interesting. Like whenever I got free reign to do something. So there were projects, for instance, as a summer intern, you get to work on your own project. And I absolutely enjoyed this. Like I put together this 100-page deck on a specific acquisition. It was so much fun to work on it, so much fun to sort of bounce ideas off people. Really, really enjoyed it. But then the experience was overall very negative because of the team I was in. I mean, there was absolutely no support. It was sort of very aggressive, unhelpful attitudes all the time, which is surprising because that's not something I experienced anywhere else. But I sort of said, okay, it's an anomaly. This is just the team, and let me try and get a job somewhere that I like in the industry. And as anyone who probably listens to this podcast knows, it's very difficult to get these jobs. I mean, you apply to hundreds, you get a few interviews, you get one or two offers. And so at the time, I was a bit fed up with the whole application process, but I still obviously applied, and I had a couple of offers. Actually more than a couple of offers, but I had two offers that I was entertaining. One was with a private equity secondaries advisory firm called Campbell Lutyens. Their headquarters in Mayfair, and another boutique investment bank. And I really, really loved the way Campbell Lutyens approached the hiring process. It just didn't feel very formal. It didn't feel very let's say condescending like some other places do. It genuinely felt like they were looking for people they would enjoy having in the company who are smart enough. So they had this careers event, and you go to that. Maybe I'll also give some tips on how to get the stuff. So I remember people sort of mentioning, when you go to career events, don't just think about them as career events. They're actually recruiting events disguised as career events. So I went to the event, and I sort of started speaking to people normally, was myself, wasn't asking fake questions or being like, tell me about this deal that you worked on and why is it important, or how is it going to change the landscape? Because the people who work in the bank, I mean, the junior people know this is bullshit. Like the question you're asking me is bullshit. You're not a graduate who sat there hoping to know how the oil and gas landscape is going to change based on a deal. And also the person asking it just hasn't gone through the experience, doesn't really know. So your question is very like reporter style question. So I was just being myself and asking natural questions, of course, asking some smart questions about deals they worked on, but trying to make it organic.
Yes.
And so after that event, it was very clear that this was a recruiting event, because certain people from the event were selected for interviews that weren't really official. It wasn't like after that event there's going to be that
panel
process. It was more, you go to the event, they're doing a recruiting cycle, and then I got contacted afterwards, come for interviews. So I went for the interviews. I just loved the office. I loved the environment. Really, really got along with everyone I met. And their questions just felt very genuine and honest. And they made me an offer for the following year. And I told them that I was going to join another firm until that offer starts. And so they said, look, the chances of you starting with another company, because the boutique investment bank said, we'll give you they didn't hire anyone full-time straight away on the junior side. They only hired long-term internships, and then they made offers to those they liked. And they've told me that so far 100% of the people who got the internship offer converted into a full-time offer. They were great people. I really enjoyed meeting them and speaking to them. And so I told the investment bank I would start that internship. It would sort of finish a month or so before my offer was due to begin. And I was going to do that. But they said the chances of you joining a boutique investment bank, working with them for 6 months, and then taking a month off and joining us are almost impossible. So we'll give you that long-term internship and also the full-time offer. So you can start with us early and then sort of connect everything together. And we'll just treat you as a normal employee, but because of, classes like the analyst class that goes in, etc.
Yes.
So it just makes sense for us to do it that way. And I said yes, absolutely. It's a great experience, and I would love to, because it was just sort of a really nice place to join. Nice. I worked there for about 7 or 8 months. Loved it, loved the work I was doing, loved the team. Honestly, it was such a different experience to what I had before. And during that time, I got exposure to a lot of the work they were doing. And for me personally, since I was quite young, I just thought I really like businesses. And so the idea of going into finance was to try and understand how businesses make decisions, why a business decides to buy another business, why they decide to raise equity to maybe expand in a certain area. And I thought IBD would give me, or let's say investment banking would give me that exposure. But once I started the work, I realized it's very specific to investment banking.
Yes.
And it was not so much you understand the holistic company. It's sort of you understand what you need to understand to get the deal
very
done.
transactional.
Yeah, and it makes sense, because if you're working on billion-dollar deals, you're not going to be in a position of the CEO understanding operations and also building a model and speaking to investors. Everyone has the role to play, and that's completely fine. But it sort of at the time I thought I wanted that much more exposure into how to create something, because it's always the idea people have. I have this idea for a business or that idea. How do I actually start it?
Execution.
And so exactly. And so I thought, okay, maybe the best way for me to get that exposure is to just start something.
Nice.
So that's how it came about from that experience.
There's a lot to touch on there.
Yeah, sorry, I answered maybe five questions in that initial
not at all. It was spot on, like the journey. But in terms of landing a graduate private equity job, like what do you think was some of the advantages you had that helped you get that job? Like if you have any advice for someone who is...
Yeah, definitely a lot. I think there are so many things that you'll probably hear. I mean, at least for me, I have that attitude. It's just like, really, like, are they going to focus on this? But actually, places do, because you have to think of an investment bank. It's an institution, and so the institution, it differs between larger institutions and smaller ones, like the boutiques versus the larger places, but you have an HR department that's responsible for the hiring, or at least the initial phase of the hiring process. The HR people care about certain things. They don't know what the job is. I mean, they know high level what the job is, but they don't know the ins and outs of it. So you could be the best person at modeling, and they're not going to know this. You'll have to get through them to get to the investment bankers who are following up on the later stages of the hiring process, for them to then test you on your modeling. So one of the key pieces of advice is you have to put so much effort. Okay, I think that's really important, and don't underestimate any of the different areas of the effort, let's say, that you're going to put in. So if you're filling out an online application, do it well. Do it really well. Like, invest the time in it, because someone on the other side is reviewing this, and if they sense that you didn't put the effort in, they're not going to really put you through. Psychometric tests, again, put the effort in. It's really important to I mean, there are so many workarounds in applications. There are psychometric test answers online. You can pay people to do them for you. No one really knows, but a lot of banks are figuring these things out, and they're constantly working around them. And in the boutique I mentioned that made me the offer, they actually invited me to do the psychometric tests in their offices as the very last stage of my application, which was a lot. I mean, it would be so sad if I made it through everything, meeting the managing director or the managing partner, and then you failed your psychometric tests.
Or imagine they let you do one online and then you do the same.
Exactly. I think that's what they did. I think they tell you do it online, and then we're just checking you actually did them before we make you an offer. So it was. So it's really important to do them well. Write a decent cover letter, be specific, mention things, and 100% network as much as you can, but network genuinely, because you have to think about those who are going to these events. It's an analyst or an associate who is just a few years older than you. They've been in your shoes. Some of them have even been in your shoes 6 months ago. And they know the process. They know, like, you need someone to try and push your application internally. And the banks encourage this in a way. So probably as a team of analysts, you'll have a meeting where you discuss people that you've met at networking events, or you've met at recruiting events and companies where you went and give presentations. And so just do all the key things, the basic things. Ask for someone's contact details, send them a thank you note after the meeting or after the event. Tell them you really enjoyed the conversation. Don't be too eager, I would say. It's a slight turn off. But just be genuine, like, think of it as if you've met someone you respect, who's a friend. And it's shocking, but don't ask stupid questions. Like, the number of times I was at an event and then someone asks the managing director or the partner, how much money do you make? Or it's shocking. It sounds ridiculous, but it actually happens. Or ask the analyst, like, I don't know, are there any hot people on the team? You'd be shocked, but these things actually happen.
Really? Okay.
And so, just behave decently. Always know that you're being assessed. So during your internship, behave professionally, genuinely, in a friendly manner. Always have a good attitude, a can-do attitude. And so, nail the online application, prepare for the psychometric tests, go to as many networking events as you can, get to meet as many people as you can. And most of them, when they go to these events, they know they're there to recruit. So you don't have to be too eager with asking questions. Just start the conversation normally. Tell me about yourself. How did you land this job? Are you enjoying it? What type of work do you work on? Are there any interesting deals you're working on at the moment? And the person you're speaking to will naturally at some point say, hey, let's stay in touch, or are you interested in the job? Because they get, you'll see in some events, they get surrounded by so many people.
Correct.
And so a bunch of them will come and say, hey, can we exchange details so I can network with you? And it's very off-putting. It sounds too direct.
Yes.
But so throughout their interaction with 10, 20 people on that day, if they feel that they've had an interesting, genuine interaction with someone, they will remember them. And in most cases, at least in my case, I would just start the conversation normally, asking the other person about themselves. And at some point, they will tell you, okay, what about you? Tell me a little bit about yourself. So you just have a few key points in your mind that you're going to mention. I'm Egyptian. I moved to the UK when I was 16. English is my second language, was at that point maybe. I'm at Imperial, I love sports. And then they'll be like, oh, which sports? I'm a big rugby player. And they will say, or I'm a big footballer, or I'm into this. And then again, it becomes a natural conversation. And at the end, just sorry to interrupt, but to round off the point, at the end, if they don't ask for details, say, do you mind if we stay in touch? Can I have your details? 100% of the time they'll be like, yeah, sure. Send a thank you note. Even if you don't get any response, that's it. But then if you get a response and you're able to send an email or something back and forth, once you're writing your cover letter or once you're on the online application, send that person a message first asking, tell him, hey, I saw this ad online. I know you guys are recruiting for this role. Do you mind if I mention that I met you and spoke to you?
Yes.
Because even this has been so intrinsic in the process that a lot of companies have it on their website where they'll say, tell us who you know in the company, or have you met anyone at the company that you've spoken to? And so mention it in your cover letter, mention it in the application. 90% of the time, what happens on the backside of this is, on the back end of it, is that whoever's reviewing the application will see someone's email mentioned, or name mentioned. They'll drop them an email saying, hey, someone's applying, this is their name, maybe this is their LinkedIn if you need their picture. They've mentioned that they've spoken to you at this event. Is this true? Again, unless it's an absolute lie, they will say, yeah, sure. Or if you made a really good impression, the response will be, yeah, this is a really great person. Let's bring them in for an interview. So you just make yourself stand out from so many applicants.
No, I think this emphasis you placed on being genuine, I think when it comes to any job, that first point of contact, they just want to know you as a human being before anything else, because they will definitely test you technically. Don't worry about the technical aspects, and showing that you know about the deals and understanding the details, that will come later on. So that's a very great tip, I guess, in terms of just focus on being genuine and really focus on the quality of the application step by step, so that you can make sure that you have already an edge against the other people applying. In that private equity job towards the end, where did you move from, yes, I love this job, to I want to quit, to I want to start? How did that happen?
I think I love this job stayed with me throughout until I left. Honestly, it was the people who worked there. Fantastic people, super genuine, super nice, and genuine in an honest way. We're there to work. We're there to get a job done. They're stressed about their families, their work, their life, as much as I am. So I didn't have unrealistic expectations when I started the job, and I had the previous Nomura experience. So the bar was really low. So I saw how bad it can get, and I really appreciated that. A lot of them, even when I made a mistake, were like, oh, you've copied this number incorrectly, but it was never in as bad of a way. It was never dehumanizing. So I enjoyed it throughout. Let's say 6 or 7 months in, I just understood that, okay, I'm going to be doing this for the next 2 to 3 years. This is the progression. The role was private equity secondaries advisory, which was you work on basically M&A, let's say, or not M&A, but you're selling private equity investment stakes. So let's say a fund has invested in 20 different companies. They have a $20 billion fund. They want to exit certain investments, but it's still sort of part of that fund. Or I'm an investor. I've invested into a fund. The fund is 10 years. I want to realize my returns now. And so I'm locked in for 10 years, but it's been 5 years and I've done really, really well in that fund. So you need someone to come in, and if you own, let's say, 10% of the 20 billion fund, you're selling a 2 billion stake in the fund. So you need to value the underlying assets. You need to value your investment stake at the fund relative to the net asset value and sell that on. And there is a secondary market for stakes in private equity funds. Because you could be invested in a fund and then suddenly your firm's changed strategy and you want to, go into hedge funds. But you still did really well. Or you think that fund needs or even a GP, like a general partner, a private equity firm needs a a continuation fund because they've done really well in their investments that they don't want to sell after 10 years. They want to hold this for another 10 years.
Oh, okay.
So they need some investors to come in, buy out the previous investors, create a new fund that would extend beyond this. Again, it's been a few years, so I'm sure someone in the firm will explain this way better than I have. I understood that process, and I understood what experience I'd be accumulating throughout the next few years. And I thought, okay, I want to accumulate a different experience. I want to understand how, if you and I got an idea for a business, how do we actually execute it? How do we start it? And so I thought about it a lot for a little bit, and I decided, okay, the best way for me to do this is probably to just start something and see how it goes. But I think the context I mentioned earlier in our conversation is very important. When I made that decision, I went to the firm and I said, I think I want to resign. This is what I'm interested in. I explained to them the thinking, and I said, I'm happy to stay on board for as long as you need me to make sure that I hand over everything well. I don't want to be the person who goes to a company and says, look, I'm bored, I'm leaving, or I found something better. No, you guys were really great to me, and I want to do this the best way possible. So I think I stayed beyond my notice period. And I mean, in the last few days, I was really not doing much. I was sort of sending 1 or 2 emails, but it gave the team the comfort to know, okay, if something comes up, I'm there to contextualize things. And yeah, they had replacements. They were able to take on board the workload, and things were going fine. And also a really important part of the thinking is that I knew what would happen if this business failed. So I knew that potentially I may be able to speak to the same firm again and say, can I rejoin? Like, I developed this experience, I started something, it didn't work out. I'm sure it will help you guys, and I'm happy to start from scratch. I'm not going to be saying, you know, hire me at a senior position. Like, I personally was at peace with coming in again as a zero experience analyst joining the firm. I knew if I did this for a year or two, I'm still in the market to join any investment firm or any investment bank as a junior, and I would be happy to make that start. Financially, I had saved a little bit of money, and I knew sort of what I would do if this didn't go well, so I wouldn't struggle. And so, yeah, you have to think about the context you're in. You have to do right by the people you're working with at the moment, and you have to do right by yourself. I didn't have a family to support, so it was fine if I'll slum it for a bit. I would have been happy with it. And yeah, that's important context, I think. And the context is never, I don't want to work for someone, I want to start my own thing, because you have to work for someone. Like, I work for my employees at Guillam. Like, I'm the last person to get paid, I'm the last person to see any returns. I'm the person who, if anything goes wrong that no one can deal with, I have to deal with it. If something went on fire, it's not the responsibility of the employees, it's my responsibility. If suddenly we don't have money to pay for salaries, it's my responsibility. And that's something a lot of people don't understand. It's you work for someone all the time.
And I think also, because in your case, like a lot of entrepreneurs have investors that they work with, and they invest in their startups. So in a way, you also work for them as well. Like, they need to know how you're performing, what's the outlook, what's the, like, okay, give us an overview of operations, what's the growth plan like. So you always have someone, either whether it's the employees in your case, or the investors and the employees, or but there's always someone you kind of work for, as you mentioned.
And I think it's very important to contextualize entrepreneurship as well, because businesses differ. I mean, if you start a business, obviously we all hear about the incredible success stories, or the 10 million pound plus round raises. But if you start a business and then suddenly you raise 20 million pounds, your experience as an entrepreneur is very different to someone who's bootstrapping a business. It's almost two different worlds, because you raise 20 million pounds, you hire a CFO, you hire a CMO, you hire a COO, you hire a chief HR officer, or whatever. So you have people who have experiences in certain areas that take care of them. And so they come to you with context, issues. They tell you, this is the standard position that we would take as a normal company would take, but maybe you want to behave differently or react differently. But when you're bootstrapping a business, you're everything.
Yeah.
So you're hiring someone, you Google, how do I hire someone?
Yeah.
What are the requirements? People will say, send me a contract. You write up the contract yourself using templates online. You don't know what you should include, what you shouldn't include. So it's a very different experience.
Yes.
And so it's important to, I think, make that distinction always when thinking about businesses.
Makes sense. You decided to quit that job, and then how did you come to the decision that you want to open a coffee shop or a coffee house? Like, did you do any research, or you were super passionate about it, so you knew that this was the plan? This is the, like, I want for sure a coffee shop. Like, how did that decision making process happen?
It wasn't very sophisticated to begin with. The decision making process. I think as I've gone through this experience, I've learned, okay, what it's like to study a market, understand the business you're creating, the potential market share that you can acquire, the potential size of the market, what people want to be doing, etc., and all of that before. But when I started the business, I just thought, okay, I wanted to get the experience of creating something from scratch. Which business should I start? And I was really passionate about coffee. I love coffee. I was always on weekends just going to random far cafes that served really great coffee on the specialty side, understanding what they're doing. And I felt that there was a lot of things that I would have liked to do differently in the cafes that I went to, and I would have ideally liked to create something unique. And so basically creating the cafe that I'd like to go to.
Nice.
And so I just thought, okay, let's do that. I mean, my market research was, there's a lot of coffee shops in London. They all seem to be doing okay. If this doesn't grow and it's one cafe, it's fine. I have a cafe. That's it. And I'll do something else on the side, or just get a manager to run it and then do something else. And so I went online, created a company. It's very easy on Companies House. It's very easy, and it's deceiving to think I've created a company, I'm an entrepreneur. But obviously all the hard work comes later. So we created the company, started to literally Google design companies for cafes, email a bunch of them, get quotes. Again, you get a bunch of quotes and you don't know, is this too much? Is this too little? No one I knew had that experience. A lot of the people I spoke to in cafes, some were really helpful. They all did it themselves to an extent. So the standard specialty coffee shop where it's someone who's into coffee, gets his plumber friend, his carpenter friend, and they build something together. It seems really handmade, and then they do amazing coffee, and so people come for the coffee. But I wanted to create a more holistic experience. I wanted the amazing coffee on the specialty side with a great place that would be a beautiful design firm designed it and a good contractors fitted it out. So anyway, I just started speaking to people, getting a sense. My design company said, okay, you need a location. I was like, okay, do you know a lawyer that would get me that location? And they introduced me to someone. Again, the lawyer was like, I'll introduce you to an agent. And I just thought, what's the agent going to do? Everything is online. I can cycle around London, look at shops and call them up. And so I actually did that. I knew the area around Imperial needed a cafe because I knew there weren't that many good specialty coffee shops in the area. And I found a sign on a window that said, this location is up for lease. Called them up, started speaking to them, got the lawyer involved. And obviously that one went through, but a few others before that I'd spoken to fell through. And I'm really glad they did, because that location was great for us. And so, yeah, that's basically how I just started. And I had no experience. I mean, I just went online, researched how to make coffee. I knew sort of theoretically how to make specialty coffee. I went to a lot of courses, even traveled to Switzerland to attend like a 2-day event on the science of specialty coffee and how
on creating.
I think it was at a university in Switzerland. I don't remember the name of the uni, but it's sort of, there's a lot of scientists working on food science, and so that extends to coffee science. Companies like Nestle, companies Like Illy, they pay for people's PhDs to do research into coffee at top universities in the world. It's a huge market. So just attended, heard some of the research, where to find more about things, met some people, roasters, etc. But again, realistic sort of hands-on experience, I didn't have any. So I just thought, okay, we'll start, put ads up for manager, coffee shop manager, interviewed people. It was a very interesting experience. Hired a team. Some of them didn't show up on the first day of work, which was my first exposure into how to work in hospitality, unfortunately. But yeah, I remember the first day someone didn't show up, and I was messaging them like, "Are you late? It's the first day. How are you? Like, is everything okay?" No response. Followed up again, no response. And then I was really,
that a manager or a barista?
No, one of the baristas.
Okay.
And they were just updating their status on WhatsApp, changing their profile pics. So they were just ignoring me. I was like, okay. But now I know this happens a lot. I mean, we have virtual interviews scheduled with applicants and they don't turn up to the virtual interview.
Okay.
So it's just part of the experience.
Yeah. And how did you go by... Okay, what's the menu? How do I want to shape the brand? How do I want to spread the word? Like, because I feel these things can be done in many different ways of how you want to build the brand. What's your niche point? How do I want to sell it so that people start coming into my place? Like, how did you start thinking of these different issues? Like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so for me, I wanted to create the place that I wanted to go to. And so that distilled into a number of areas. I wanted to go into a cafe that I felt was elegant. I wanted to go there and taste different coffees every time. So every visit, when I went to these beautiful specialty cafes sort of far away, I could order from their filter menu and I would have a Kenya one day, or a Mexico another day, or a Mexico from a different farm another day. And I felt that was a much more enriching experience in coffee, because people who drink wine, they get to experience grapes from different farms, different regions, different blends, different mixes. And so they constantly, every experience of wine they have is different, or they selected based on what they're eating or the environment they're in, or the morning or night. So for me, I wanted that with coffee. And so do I want something slightly bolder if I want to feel like I'm waking up, or do I want something that's light and fruity if it's a nice summery day? And so I wanted the cafe to have different single origin coffees that I could try. They rotate, so almost with every experience, every time I visit, I can have a different coffee. I wanted the cutlery to be cool. I wanted the cups to be cool. I hate handles on cups. So if you notice in our cafes, they're all cups that you hold. And even if I have a handle on a cup, I always try and drink like this, because I feel it's just a nicer connection with the cup. So all of these little things, I mean, there's 20 or 30 that I could talk through, but all of them for me would add up to a different experience. And that's what we try and implement with our offering. I mean, the matcha we sell is ceremonial grade organic matcha. The hot chocolate we make is, we buy these incredible single origin cocoa bars that we melt and then just turn into a hot chocolate. The tea we make, we get the loose leaf tea, we brew it to the right temperature for the right duration of time, and then we filter it and just present you with a final product, so you don't get a tea bag and hot water and you need to make your own tea basically. So it's sort of refining the experience in so many small ways. For me, adds up to a very different experience. The challenge I'm facing is to have a consistent enough team who buys into these ideas that they prepare things the way you want them to be prepared, or follow that process. And that's the biggest challenge I think the industry as a whole is facing after COVID and Brexit, with very significantly less people going into hospitality, people not taking it as a serious job. And so I think, again, I'm giving such a broad answer to your question.
No, it's actually very a great level of detail.
But the challenge, there are certain challenges I didn't have when I had one or two locations, because it's very easy to hire people supervise them and make sure we're doing things the right way, be with the team, make sure that they care about things and understand why we're doing things a certain way. But then as you grow, it's a different process, because you need to hire people who are then informing the baristas and the junior team members about why we should be very focused on the coffee not being a gram off the weight that we've set, or the grinder has to be cleaned correctly to make sure it's producing consistent coffee. And so people who join us who don't have that context, as you're teaching them, a lot of them really buy into the idea and they take pride into it, but also a big number of them don't, and they don't care that much. So it's a process of, okay, we need people who buy in, but then you're trying to hire baristas, not that many people want to be baristas, so it's a constant struggle. For bigger companies it's easier, because you have a quality control manager, a training manager, an HR person, a hiring a recruiter, an HR coordinator, and so they take care of this. They're not stressed. But in smaller companies, it's me, one or two other people. I mean, I have a fantastic team that thankfully stuck with us, so they also take on board a lot. And so our objective at the moment is to grow enough that we're able to expand the team to improve our standards, or to maintain the standards, if that makes sense. Because you can't maintain them at this size. You can maintain them at a smaller size, but you can't offer your team career progression if you're small. They'll just be stuck managing one or two locations. But if you have really smart, hardworking people, they want to see growth in their income, in their career, in their responsibilities. So you grow the business almost, again, touching back on the entrepreneur point, you're not doing it for you as much as you're doing it for your team, because you work for them ultimately. So yeah, it's... I don't even know if I answered your question.
No,
I'm
you
just
did.
rambling.
You did. And there's a lot that I want to
unpack,
ask about and unpack. I think what I'm interested in is, like, okay, you start with one location. It's much easier to manage, as you said.
Yeah.
Then you open second, third. You have 4 now. Is that correct? How did you decide that, okay, now I need to hire this person that does this job? Is it that, like, something you were doing a lot and you realize that, oh, my time is wasted a lot on this part, so I need someone just to go manage the baristas in the different locations, be able to travel during the day? Like, can you tell me a bit on that?
Yeah, exactly, spot on. We have 4 locations and a 5th is currently under construction.
Nice.
That's a different story. It's actually interesting. I mean, part of the challenges that come up when you're doing things, but it's exactly as you said. I mean, I hired a manager for the location, for the very first location. The guy was amazing. His name is Nick. He's now managing, I think, a small hotel and a pub somewhere in the countryside. He's moved there with his family. The guy was the perfect manager for the first location, because he was such a nice, sociable person that people were coming for him. Nice. You know what I mean? Of course, any job or any company is a team effort. So he's doing really well on the customer facing side. But for that to work, you have to have the right equipment. They have to be maintained well. You have to make sure that there's someone in finance, or me, paying the salaries on time, checking that we're paying tax, checking that we're paying council tax, speaking to the lawyers, making sure the location is legal, checking health and safety documents, checking all of that stuff. So Nick was doing a fantastic job on the customer facing side, on the building a nice relationship with the baristas. He was really hardworking, putting in the effort. But then I realized, okay, I need to be doing so much work on the finance side, on the legal side, on the health and safety side, on the negotiation with supplier side. Because yes, you'll hire someone who's doing training, for instance, or someone who's managing the operation day to day. But then when you're negotiating with a supplier, maybe I'm more pushy than him with prices, so we get better prices, or I'm able to invest the time that he's in the shop to travel to different suppliers to then sort of play them off each other and get the best deal. So at some point you sort of see that you're doing something a lot, and you realize, okay, maybe I'll hire someone to invest more time doing this one specific thing, so I can then have time to do other things. Or at some point you sort of think, okay, I know what it's like to hire someone. You do the interviews. Once you confirm that this is someone I want them to start with us, they need to send you certain documents, you need to store them, they need to sign a contract, and then they begin. So if you're at a size where you have 4 locations, you're doing this almost once a week. So, okay, we need to hire someone who's doing this on a daily basis. But then you hire someone to do that on a daily basis. And if they're good, they will automatically be adding value. So they will say, okay, I've reviewed the contract that we send, and I think there's room for improvement. And so they will work on, okay, what is actually the best way to build a contract that works for the company and works for the employees. And there's so much to managing a company. So what about the employee handbook that discusses things like turning up late to work? How do you get punished with that? Or what is the course of action if an employee just doesn't show up one day? Or when you have holidays, who's tracking the holidays? Who's going to be making sure people are paid for their holidays at the end of the month? If you're running the business and you're focused on the quality of the products, you can't really be doing this on a daily basis, paying the suppliers on a daily basis. So you start to organically understand different roles, but then at some point you really don't know who to hire. Like, you're doing too much. There's a vague area that you're covering, but you're just sort of thinking, okay, do I hire a quality control person, or do I hire a training manager, or do I hire an area manager? And then you hire an area manager, and the person is an area manager for a different coffee chain, but they do things very differently because the area manager over there is supported by a team of HR people, a team of legal people, a team of quality control people, a team of health and safety specialists. So you had a specific role for him in mind, but he's actually not doing that role. And so it's very tricky. It's very challenging. And I think, again, bigger companies or companies with bigger budgets are able to get around this by spending money. They just test. They hire, they test things. This person works, this person doesn't work, and you hear it all the time with big layoffs. Google hires this many people over 3 years, and then at some point they're like, "We're laying off 10%." You as a user don't feel a thing because they realize we just hired the wrong people, we put on the wrong jobs. Again, companies that are happy to lose money for the next 10 years, 5 years, they'll just hire a bunch of people, test things out, hire, fire, replace roles, replace things, or hire someone from a much bigger organization to come and build that area for you. But as an entrepreneur building something from the ground up that you're trying to bootstrap, it's much more...
You have less area to test.
You have less maneuverability.
To try to get the best decision that will lead you to the next step that you have in mind. And it's tricky if you get the wrong person or the wrong next step.
Because it's awkward for both people. You hire someone, they're not doing what you expected them to do. They don't really know how to do the things you want them to do. But their job title was the correct one. In the previous firm, they were just a cog in a big wheel. So other people were helping them. They were sort of just sending emails between people, but they weren't actually managing a process. So it's tricky. It's very tricky.
No, I agree.
Hiring is the trickiest thing.
True. So now you have 4 locations. So I'm sure that there's something happening in terms of the back end, let's call it, as in people helping you with operations, finance, legal. So can you briefly tell us who did you hire to help you with that back end part of the business? And how did you make sure that what's happening in the office is coherently connected to the day-to-day operations in the 4 different locations you have in the coffee shops?
I think that's an excellent question because you'd be surprised how much work goes into keeping 4 locations running. So we have a lot of people actually, let's say in our offices, working to help support that business. Obviously there's marketing, there is sort of HR, there's operations, there's finance. There's a variety of different roles, and in each area there's more than one person working. So for me, that's always been my approach, is that just hire people with the right attitude, give them the resources and give them the direction, and micromanage them in the beginning to make sure that they understand how to approach work well and be connected with them. And then slowly you'll step away because I mean, that's actually an interesting area. Someone was just asking me, we hired someone to work with them, and they were like, what's the balance between micromanagement and not micromanaging? And my personal view is you have to micromanage at the beginning, because if you have someone come in with no experience, they don't know how to do a lot of things, or they might know but inefficiently. So you have the experience of 2-3 years of work. You can help them just jump those steps. Instead of learning by trial and error, you can say, no, instead of using the cursor, basic stuff, the mouse to switch between tabs, just hit Alt tab and it'll be quicker. Or this is the course that you should take to be quicker on Excel, etc. So at the moment, we have a director of operations who's amazing. He's doing a great job. He's learning so much and taking on so much responsibility. He actually started with us as a junior barista.
Wow.
And his growth has been phenomenal. He's really absorbed everything that I've sort of tried to direct or said, these are areas that we can work on or focus on, or this is how I do these things, test it out. And he's just had the best attitude towards learning.
Nice.
Everything is approach it with an open mind, learn, understand what we're trying to do and learn how to do it. It's very methodical, sort of doing a great job. And we have a variety we have a large number of people working with him who also have the same attitude. It would be unfair if I start naming them by naming them, because I'll have to name a lot of people. You get some incredible people who buy into the vision, who buy into the idea, and they see their potential career growth with the company. And for me as well, one of the biggest things is just the pride of what you're working on. Like if you join, you have no experience, you're straight out of uni, you have the right attitude, and now you're the equivalent of a let's say HR director for a company that has 50 people working, for instance, or 40 people working. It's really interesting. And in that space, there is no bureaucracy. There's zero room for bureaucracy. If there's not a process, you create the process. If the process is not working well, you need to eliminate it and create a better process. But of course, on the other side, again, in the back office, we have a lot of people who join, they're the wrong fit, or suddenly they work well for a month and think, okay, I can start a business. Let me quit on the worst terms and just start my own thing. And then they start something and it fails a month later. And again, it goes back to the context of why you're starting something. So yeah, there's a lot of work that goes on in the background. Paying the salaries, HR, legal, negotiating with landlords, negotiating with lawyers. Not every job is as simple or as easy as hire a lawyer to do it, or hire a consultant to do it, or bring an HR or an agency to do this. Actually, even when you hire people, you still have to internally do a lot of work liaising and coordinating and making sure they do things the way you want them to be done. Because you could hire an agency and then suddenly your branding is just completely different. Or you can hire a lawyer and they tell you this lease is fine, and you read through it and there's a lot of clauses that would just ruin your day-to-day operation, because he doesn't know how a cafe runs day-to-day. Or you can hire an HR person externally and then they just shape the culture in the company completely badly, like based on their own interpretation of what a company should operate like, or a right attitude. So you have to do a lot of work, and there is so much work that goes in the back end of things, and the connection is just through technology. Instant messaging, emails, project management software, checklist software, things being done, ordering software, so the people in the office can know what's being ordered, what's not. We know when people are clocking in, clocking out. We know the sales. When something is off, we'll be able to see, okay, something's off, let's check in with that location. We monitor reviews constantly. Any email that gets sent to us or a DM, we monitor it. Someone checks and someone's complaining about the queue time at one of the locations. The director of operations will go to the location, speak to the manager, coordinate on how we can fix it. So we try and make the communication as seamless as possible, so that we can operate efficiently. And of course, again, it's trial and error. No one has a blueprint for how these things should work. So you sort of just see how it works best and double down on the things that worked, eliminate the things that didn't work.
No, 100%. You've been operating for almost 4 years, and you've expanded from one location to 4 different locations. I I want to focus on the personal aspect of starting a business, and specifically the personal sacrifices that you've made. What do you think are the most significant personal sacrifices that you've made so far in terms of managing this business end to end, hiring people, etc., all that you've described basically?
I think, as with anyone, you make a lot of sacrifices. I always tend to think of it when I started work, there was this comfort that I had, regardless of how intense it is during the week or how hard you work. You're a junior, so there's always someone worrying about things. You don't worry about getting paid at the end of the month. You know you'll get paid. You don't worry about the deal falling through because you have a salary. You've done your part. It's someone else's responsibility to do something else. I tend to link it or draw the comparison with when I was at uni. I was 24/7 stressed because I'm always thinking about what I should be studying, what I should be doing, or the next thing I should be working on, because you have this period and then there's an exam. So that period and the exam doesn't care about weekends. It's very hard to disconnect.
True.
But when you're working, you're sort of, okay, Monday comes, you're working until Friday. Maybe you'll work a day on a weekend, on average when you're in investment banking, or maybe even an entire weekend. But again, you go in, you work, you leave. So when you have a day off, khalas, you have a day off, you're done. When you start your own business, for me at least, you're constantly thinking about things. And because I didn't want to just start 1 or 2 cafes and keep them as they are, I wanted to really understand what it's like to build a company and get that experience, and grow something. And so hitting the reality of operating a hospitality business in the UK, in coffee specifically, is very different. I mean, coffee in the UK is one of the worst markets you can enter, because if you're in the Middle East, which you'll understand and I'll understand, people drink coffee or go to cafes 24/7, all the time. If I'm meeting you, it's a cafe most of the time. Or meeting a friend, you're going on a date, you're catching up with family, it's always a cafe. But here, after 3-4 p.m, it's bars, pubs, wine bars, restaurants, pizza. It's almost impossible to just go to a cafe for coffee. So it's a very different business, very tight margins. On the specialty side as well, the market is not as big as people think. Not that many people care about their coffee. There is a big part of there's a large part of people who are very specific. They care, I want specialty. But even those, actually, if they dig deep into what they're interested in, it's more about the vibe, the branding, the aesthetics. So these are the things I've learned along the way. And the personal sacrifices for me were, just the stress and the worry and not being able to plan for the weekend and say, okay, I'm going to have brunch, I'm going to go for lunch with my family, and then go for dinner, go out one night, go home super late. Obviously, I've managed to do these things, but at the same time, there's always this nag in your mind that, okay, now I'm going to sleep late, I'm going to wake up on a Sunday, I should be catching up on emails. And then again, a lot of the weekends, a lot of the time, between anything you're doing, you're sort of catching up on emails, working, worrying about one thing, calling someone, researching, reading. I mean, I love to read and I love to learn new things. And so I remember in the first year, there were so many weekends where, okay, I'm working during the week, but on weekends, I'm just learning about different things. And so I remember my friends or people I was hanging out with would call me and it's like, hey, we're at brunch or we're in the park, and I'm just sat there reading about things. And so, I mean, I enjoyed it to an extent, but there was also this, obviously I would have really enjoyed it if I was having a picnic on a weekend or in the countryside or traveling, but the nagging stress in me just prevented me from being able to enjoy it. And that still extends to this day. Like, I've now decided that if I'm ever going to work out, it's going to be in the morning, because I can't just disconnect during the day, go work out and then come back. There's always something to be done. And yeah, on the personal side, I mean, everyone's experience is different. There's some personal stuff that I wouldn't really share, but there were a lot of sacrifices, let's say.
Makes sense, yeah. In terms of relationships as well, family, traveling back home for you. Like, I'm assuming these things are also tough to deal with a bit. I think what I'd like to touch a bit on is basically you said that you've been through a lot, you've done a lot of sacrifices, but you had that thing inside you telling you that you need to continue building this, because it's very easy for you. So you said like you had this job, you had these managers telling you whenever you want to come, just come back. What told you like, no, do it for one extra day and see what's the outcome? Like, how did you convince yourself, or what was your main motive basically?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. I think it's for me personally, I'm very competitive. So I just didn't want to fail. I mean, it's such an insane thing to go to your parents and say, I've gone to Bath, I studied economics, I worked at Morgan Stanley, I have a job in Mayfair in private equity advisory, and then I want to quit and start a cafe. So I imagine my parents maybe would have thought he's just been fired and he doesn't want to tell us, and it's an excuse. But it's just the idea that, okay, I wanted to take that intensity and apply it to a specific industry and succeed. And it was just day to day. I mean, I remember 2 weeks after we opened, the first major lockdown was announced. And it was lockdown after lockdown, the industry changing. Our first process of hiring, I put an ad up, get 70, 80 applicants a week, or a day actually in some cases. Now we afterwards we put ads up and one person would apply per day. They wouldn't be interested in coming. It was just a very different landscape. And it was very difficult because, again, I didn't have an HR department. I didn't have experienced people advising me on how to hire, who to bring, which I didn't even know what a recruitment company was. So it was a lot of hustling to do basic things that other people were just doing almost instinctively because they had the experience. And I just didn't want to fail. I was like, I want to get this done. I want to succeed. And for me at the moment, what's really pushing me is some of the amazing people who work with me in the company, because it's so inspiring when you have a 20-something-year-old who's been with you for a year or two, or someone who's been with you for a while, and then they started when you had one cafe, and now they're managing, let's say, finance for 4 places, and then hopefully in a year or two they'll be managing them for 10 places, and so they grow with the company and their responsibilities grow, and it's just very inspiring. So I spoke about the director of operations. It's really inspiring to see him, behave as if I was going to behave, or even in some cases better than me in certain situations. And it just makes me really happy. And so I want this business to be at 100 locations so that he makes the money that he'd make when he's managing 100 locations. Nice. He has a team of people, current coffee shop managers, who are also fantastic, who would then grow on to be, area managers or senior managers in a company and take on more responsibility. It's incredibly inspiring. And I'm very happy when I go into a cafe and see people I've never met, new joiners who are really happy, really positive, enjoying the work, because it's a very tough business. And so money-wise, making money from it is not on the radar now or anytime soon. So it's just about bootstrapping, making sure we're operationally profitable, we're able to sustain the operation and grow it organically to an extent. And then for the people in the company to really grow and find fulfillment in this.
I really like that you bring your inspiration from the people you hired in a way, and you rely on them to be your source of motivation. But have you ever felt like, oh, we're going through this challenge, or you're doubting this whole idea, and do you think like, do I need to share with them, or should I actually think of a strategy, execute, not tell them why, but like, how do you deal with like that?
For me personally, I don't share anything that I know someone's not going to be able to help with comfortably.
Execute on.
I'm not going to go and say, unless the repercussion would have a consequence on them.
Yes.
So I mean, there's so many nights where I'm just going to bed and then I start thinking of all the issues and challenges that we have, and I just can't fall asleep. This happens so often. But I'm not gonna call someone on the team and tell him, listen, this is not what I expected, I'm struggling, blah blah blah. No, it's something to suck up and deal with to an extent, deal with it in a healthy way. I mean, not chain smoke at night and then pass out. Again, everyone will deal with things in a healthy way, but I mean, sometimes I'll go to a friend who's not connected to the business and just, complain. Sometimes I'll just watch a movie and just think it through and deal with it myself, or I'll just capitalize on the small wins, on someone being promoted. Like I'll just get the inspiration from this of like, this person joined us at this junior level. Now he's a mature employee who's able to take on more responsibility. Or even the little wins, like I'll ask the finance team for a report and they'll send me something genuinely comprehensive, well presented, nice, beautiful Excel file. It sounds so sad, but I'll be happy. Like I'll feel like it's a small win. And so, it's about, of course, I've lost hope, not lost hope. I mean, I'm still doing it, so I haven't lost hope, but of course there were despair at some points.
Yes.
I mean, when we first opened and then no one was coming through the door and I was like, did I really make the wrong decision here? But then contextualizing it into, no, there's a pandemic starting in the world and maybe that's why people are not leaving their homes. So it's just about, I mean, any challenge you come across, you sort of not panic, think about it logically. It would be unhelpful to panic and panic people as well with you. So try and absorb it, deal with it. Let's say we don't have employees to work next weekend. It would be a panic. It would be like, okay, call this guy, work him overtime, call this guy. And honestly, I've had an amazing team, like people who are with us now, people who have left and come and go, people who have joined us and left, or people who are still with us today. Again, with these entrepreneur interviews, it sort of feels like one person, but it's actually a team. I mean, there's so many people doing incredible stuff in the company, from junior baristas to director of operations. So it's really a family to an extent, and they're doing amazing work. So you again, as a leader, let's say, you have to think about the issue. Okay, the director of operations can help me contact people to work on the next weekend. And I need to have a contingency plan. So the contingency plan is we speak to this agency to send us last minute people to work. It's much more expensive. It's going to be a hit on the bottom line. But okay, I'll deal with this. I'll let finance know, for instance, that it's fine if we don't meet the KPIs on this weekend because we have this issue and I've dealt with it that way. The worry and the negative consequence I deal with, because ultimately I'm the one who's looking at the report and seeing that we've lost money this weekend. And so I'm the one who's upset, which means maybe I'll get less money on the weekend this month because we have to pay everyone the salary that we've set. But it's not about going to them and saying, oh guys, we've fucked up this weekend. Okay, we're not making money here, we're not making money there. It's sort of something for me to deal with. And I think that's one of the major challenges when you set up the business, is that there's a lot of things different people in the team don't know about that we're dealing with. Even the stress of renegotiating a lease, because worst case scenario, the landlord would say, look, I don't want you here anymore. We're just going to put it on the market and see who the highest bidder is. Maybe I'll get an American candy store like you see on Oxford Street or whatever, some money laundering business that will come in and pay me twice the rent just to have the space as a front. So you're negotiating a lease, the team working thinks things are okay, we're working, etc. But actually you're dealing with the stress of, are we going to be kicked out? Are we not? What happens to those employees? So I have to come up with a contingency where, okay, we have maybe 4 other locations, talking about the 5th one under construction. We're going to distribute the team across those locations so they'll be safe. Okay. If I have someone in the head office who's working and technically their cost is being distributed across 4 or 5 locations, what am I going to do? Maybe I'll absorb a bigger hit because we need to maintain that person. We really like them. So there's no point in worrying the team because I've come up with a strategy in case that location falls apart. You're going to be safe in your job because I'm going to put you to work here. Maybe I'll give a hint, not a hint, but maybe I'll discuss the fact that worst case scenario,
There's
you
a
might
possibility
relocate,
of X, Y,
but
Z
you're safe in
happening,
your
yeah.
role.
That makes sense. Yes.
So you just, you worry a lot.
Worry a lot, but then what I like is that you said I need to figure out a plan to execute.
Yeah.
And then that's how I share with them that, okay, there's a probability of this happening, but
Yeah.
we're doing X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Because if you go to your, for example, maybe director of operations is a different case because you brainstorm, but if you go to the more junior people and you say, oh, we have this problem, and you just say that, it won't feel good for them or you.
Yeah.
So it's good to say, okay, this is the execution plan, this is what we're doing.
And it's a lot of people who join companies just don't understand what it takes, which is fine because they haven't
done it before.
They haven't done it before.
Yeah.
They haven't started. They're just starting their career. But I remember having this issue with someone, and there was so much back and forth between me and him. And then at some point he was like, I don't know why you're dealing with me. Don't you have an HR team to do this? And I was like, no, we have 2 cafes. It's just me. I'm the finance. I'm the HR. It's just me. So that's why you're dealing with me a lot. It's you just have to worry about stuff.
100%. Yeah. You start, for example, opening one location, and then probably the goal would be just get customers in, build brand awareness. But then how do you define the next step when it comes to growth? Like, is it, I want to reach X KPI for that location, then I'll open the second location? Or actually, to help the first location, I open the second location. Like, how do you define your next step when it comes to growth of Guillam and the brand itself?
Yeah, I think, again, another excellent question. It depends. It changes based on the person. Some people have specific goals. There's someone who starts a business, they're happy to be the owner operator of that business.
Yes.
And so they want to just focus on, this is my full-time job, this is what I do. For me personally, at this stage, I'm doing a few other things, so I can't dedicate the same time to the business. But at that point, there could have been a decision. I'm happy with 3 locations. It's operationally profitable. It's good. It's fun to have cafes, and that's it. But for me, the goalpost is always, no, we can be bigger. The goalpost is always shifting, because with any issue you have in a business, there is a solution, but it would be expensive. So let's say you want to make sure that all your baristas are super well trained. That could be you have a training center. Everyone goes through that training center for a week before they hit the floors on the cafes. But to do that, you can't really do it with 3 locations because the cost cannot be distributed.
Basically.
You need like maybe 5 more locations or 3 more locations. You need it to be at 6 or 7 locations. Because every location, if you do really well and you choose the right location that works well, is operationally profitable. But as a group, you have to also, that's my philosophy at least, you have to be as a group operationally profitable to be sustainably growing in a bootstrapped fashion. So, okay, we're making this little bit of that location, this little bit of this location. So then with 3 more, we're able to afford a training center where we can pay for someone's salary for a week to go through that center. On average, it will be 1 or 2 people a month. This is the cost overall. So we'll make sure that we've improved our standards and the locations. And this is the cost. So we have to grow to hit that cost. Let's say at some point we have a manager who's doing incredibly well. And at some point, someone works as a manager for 2, 3, 4 years, and they want to see progression in their career. They can't hit that progression in a company that has 3 locations, so they leave. So you lose a lot of talent. So then if they know the company is growing, then at some point we'll need an area manager, or we'll need someone else in the operations team, or we'll need someone else to be the director of that training center. So you offer them that career progression. And same with the director of operations, making a certain salary on 3 or 4 locations is different to making that salary on 10 locations, on 20, on 50, on 100. Same with the finance people, and it's just part of the growth of a company. We could grow tomorrow, say, to double the size, raise funding, expand at a certain way. But I think it's very disingenuous if we don't have a very clear plan to guarantee people long-term careers in the company and to risk at some point saying we've grown incorrectly or we've done the wrong things, we've run out of funding, hopefully someone will come in with more funding, or sorry guys, you've worked really hard for the last 2-3 years, but you're out of a job. So that's my approach with Guillam, at least. That's the approach I'm trying, or with any sort of ancillary or connected businesses. If you're doing well and you're working hard, I care about your growth and I want you to grow well in the company. So for me, we started the one location. I was like, okay, if I needed to step away a little bit or to actually spend more on branding, spend more on having our own beans, maybe in the future roasting our own stuff or developing our own products, then we need to be bigger. We got an opportunity to open a second one. Okay, great, but maybe I need someone to help me with managing those 2 locations. We got a third one. Okay, great, we need someone to help on the finance side, on the marketing side, on the branding, the HR side. Growing to 4 locations, again, you need more of this. 5 locations, you need actually somewhat more than one person on the finance side, more than one person on the ops side. So you always feel that the business itself is organically growing, or the requirements are being pushed up, so you're needing more people. And honestly, for me, the dream is to just be the size of Starbucks, but while maintaining our very high standards. There's so many different areas we can go into that are connected to coffee, ancillary, different products. Developing the web store a lot more, developing our maybe retail section a lot more, developing coffee shops that are not just coffee shops, but more of brunch houses with the same standard of the coffee that we serve in our coffee houses, because I think that's missing in the UK. So yeah, there's so many things you can
I'm looking
go
forward.
into.
I heard some good ideas here and there, so I'm sure
it's obviously all about the execution,
Yes.
and that's what differentiates companies. And our approach for execution is careful, thoughtful, methodical execution to guarantee minimum risk with every expansion.
You've mentioned a couple of ideas, but where do you want to take that brand? Is it, as you mentioned, like you want a big chain across London, or like do you want to maintain
Honestly,
this
the
like
sky is
5
the
to
limit.
10?
I think whatever a good opportunity presents itself, we'll pursue it to the end. I mean, we are pursuing new locations at the moment. We're pursuing, we're working on opening a 5th location. We've had some issues with the building itself, the construction licensing on the landlord side. So that's delayed the opening. It was supposed to open in January, or let's say March, April. It was supposed to open now, May, with the last round of delays, but now it's looking more towards September-ish. But again, I'm negotiating on other locations. If those come through, then maybe I'll open a 5th one before the scheduled 5th one was supposed to open. And yeah, I think a lot of people in this industry are attracted by, I want to open in central London and Soho, in this area and that area. I want to have that location, that corner site. But if the numbers don't make sense, it's not worth pursuing things for the ego. It's more about, is it a reasonable financial / business decision? And that's what we grow based on.
So your focus for now is just to expand in terms of location as much as
We're
possible?
working on 2 fronts. We're working on a web store and expansion of locations.
Okay, nice. You've been through a lot, as you've described. There's multiple decisions that need to be taken, a lot of opportunity costs with each decision, right? Like now you've mentioned it's either like, yes, opening 5th location, but I need to also work on the like the store, online store. So it's tough to start a business, but if someone wants to do it now, what is your advice for them, especially at a younger age?
On the younger side, I think it's a lot easier because when you're young, maybe you don't have the same commitments, the same responsibilities. So you're able to invest more of your time. You're able to sacrifice more of your free time. And I think that's the right way to approach starting something. Of course, if you're on the older side and you have experience in something, you could be significantly more successful than someone young who's starting, which happens all the time. You see 50-year-old or 60-year-old startup founders. I mean, they may be working in a specific area for 20-30 years and they know a niche incredibly well and they know it's underserved, so they start something in that space. My advice would be to just make sure you're starting something for the right reasons. I think starting something because you don't want to work for someone else is the worst reason ever, because you could be in a company having a very entrepreneurial approach, managing a team just like an entrepreneur would, have access to resources, be able to suggest things and develop the area or function you're in as if you're developing a company. But you're even protected on the downside because you don't take the same risk that starting a company entails. So my advice is make sure you're starting for the right reasons. You might be in an area where you feel there's a niche. You might be incredibly passionate about something that you don't see out there that you want to create or help create. And be comfortable with where it could go. I mean, if you're a potter, let's say, and you're creating beautiful ceramics, be comfortable that maybe if you're a lawyer that's creating pottery, be comfortable that maybe at some point 2-3 years down the line, once you've created this business, you could be making less money than if you had been in law. But are you happy with the lifestyle? Are you happy with the control you have over your time, with your control over where this business goes? Make sure you're protected on the downside. That's really unhelpful if you have built really goodwill in a company for 2-3 years and then you quit on very bad terms and create a business that doesn't work out and you have to start again from scratch somewhere else. Make sure you're not quitting because you're not succeeding in your current area, I would say. Like if you're not a very good employee somewhere, chances are you're not going to be a very good founder if you start a business. Founding a business that stays there for the long term requires, from what I've seen at least, a lot of discipline, a lot of hard work, a lot of sacrifices. You're not going to start a business and do all the sexy stuff
at first.
You'll start a business and you'll have to do all the work that no one else wants to do or is unable to do initially. And then slowly you can transition to, okay, maybe I'll focus more on the strategy, on the branding, because I've hired people to take care of the other areas. There's so many examples of this not being the case. With people managing based on an idea to raise so much money in good markets and then immediately just have people covering all the areas that they don't want to focus on. So they, as a founder, go on podcasts and focus on the sexy stuff and discuss strategy. But I would say 90% of the time that's not the case. I mean, if you think about the truly successful companies that have endured, Google, Facebook, Tesla, like you read about the biographies and all of these people have worked all of the founders have worked really hard doing all the difficult things, coding at the beginning, hiring, developing things. Again, you have to understand that the media is not going to sit with someone and discuss boring, problematic things. They're just wanting to discuss the sexy scandals, the growth, from starting in a garage to owning a McLaren, but that period in between is never discussed in detail. 100%. So you just have to make sure that you as a founder are comfortable with the grunt work, comfortable with the sacrifices, passionate about what you're doing, understand that it could potentially not be a big business that's making a killing, but as long as you're passionate, it's enough to start. And you have to just understand that as well. I think the first 2 or 3 years of work in a good company equip you with so many key skills that university doesn't equip you with. Just being able to understand what it's like to be an employee somewhere, being able to understand what it's like when your manager sends you a message that's unpleasant, or how to ask things, or how to understand the dynamics within a team. Because if you start a company, you'll have those dynamics within your team. What's a good dynamic? What's a bad dynamic? What's a good culture? Again, the word culture is used so much, but without experiencing it, it's very hard to actually understand what the culture is.
No, 100%. I really like that last bit of, if you're not an employee, how would you manage employees? So it could be a great tip, as in try to work at least for a year. Just to understand, as you said, like, okay, what does it mean to build a business? What's a strategy? How do you communicate with others? How do you convince people? And then you do that. And it's also a great tip that you said. I kind of think that financial freedom could be a motive, but I see that definitely it should be backed up by something else. Like if financial freedom is your only goal and you don't want to work for anyone and that's your primary goal, so you just start something, I agree with you. Like you need to have some passion or something to complement that pain point of yours then the chances of succeeding are much higher.
Yeah, because you have to think about it. Every single restaurant that you see, every single website selling anything that you see, every single shop that has 1 or 2 locations, that's a startup, that's a founder, that's a family. Every carpenter who is working, that's again working for himself. All of that stuff, every plumber, every electrician. But do they all have the financial freedom that somehow is presented as this is me starting a business? Not really, because the stories we see, the financial freedom, the do your own thing, build a website, work on it 2-3 hours a day, and you have shipping, and then you have a Lamborghini, is mostly people trying to scam you out of course fees. That's not how the world works. Yes, that could be the case in some instances. Yes, there are people who are maybe much smarter than I am who are able to build things like this. Maybe there are people who are significantly luckier who found niches where they were able to build multi-million-pound businesses without working that much. But I think on average and in the majority of cases, you have to work hard. So it has to be something beyond just the financial freedom. Because, let's take some concrete examples. If you work really hard at Deloitte, PwC, any of those companies, if you're a partner or a director by the age of early 30s, you could be making hundreds of thousands a year. But if you're a founder, to make that money, maybe it will take you until you're 40 or 50, depending on the business. So it doesn't always mean actually that you're going to get that freedom working on your own. Or you can even join a bigger startup or a tech company or a traditional business that's also a startup and make more money in the long term being one of the early employees in that business. So
no, 100%.
It's not always I have to start something.
There are other means for financial freedom, and the one you're choosing when it comes to starting a business is one of the toughest. Like it could be the most rewarding, even financially. But what you're saying is that that's not always the case, and it's sometimes super slow growth, and the typical path could be a winner when it comes to these cases. So yes, great.
And I mean, I'll give one example which I think is fantastic. I've made so many mistakes when I first started the business, worked with so many people that I regret working with. But one of the constants has been a law firm that we use. It's called Baker Skelly. It's a group of partners. They used to work for one of the large law firms in the UK, again, hundreds of lawyers, big city offices, amazing work. But that group of partners decided, okay, we're not interested in all these bells and whistles. We don't like the bureaucracy of the big firm. We don't like the fact that we're spending more of our time managing people rather than actually working on legal matters. So they all left, started this boutique firm together. It's a few lawyers, a handful of lawyers. They're all partners. They're all focused on working with decent clients, long-term relationship builders. And that's a startup. I mean, it started basically the same time we started Guillam. And so it's been the same. They all work. They're happy with again, I don't know the intricacies. Maybe they've taken financial hits. Maybe they haven't. But they prefer it because they're partners. They know each other. They work on stuff. They are able to not have a Monday morning meeting where they're discussing the new joiners and their development or the new deals other partners are pitching for. They have much more control over their time. Maybe that came with a financial hit, but they've made that choice and are happy with it. So think about the reason why you're starting something. They maybe have thought, okay, worst case scenario, this is how much we'll make. Best case scenario, maybe it will grow. We'll have a few people working underneath each of us, and we're happy with being at that size. We're working with great clients. We have a solid base, and we want to take care of our families, spend more time with them. So that's another reason to start something. It doesn't always have to be, I want a Lamborghini and a private jet. And again, some of the smartest business people or founders I know, they would never spend the money on that stuff.
Yes, no,
so
100%.
If you see a video giving you business advice with a Lamborghini or a private jet, skip.
No, 100%, 100%. I agree. Let's say I give you a 9 to 5, usual progression. Would you take that in return for more time, basically?
I think I personally wouldn't, because I'm the type of person who I need to be doing something all the time. So even if I had my 9 to 5, I'd be reading, I'd be doing something on the side. I'd be just behaving differently, let's say. And that's what I'm trying to get to now with the business. I'm trying to build it in a way that I can work very, very intensely, but also in a slightly more sustainable way. So I can make friends, I can date someone, I can still see my family, friends, and do the things I enjoy.
Yes.
And have more time for myself. And so, yeah, I think the initial first few years are always chaotic with any business, but you can get to a point where, okay, we've developed certain things. Maybe if it's slightly more structured, we'll grow in a short term in a slightly slower way, but we're building a foundation so that not everyone for the next 10 years is just erratically and frantically working and burning out.
No, 100%.
So yeah, I would be definitely doing something
even if
I was in a 9 to 5 space.
But I guess doing it as in, you know, everything happening, you have that thing you're building from scratch. I guess it's also more rewarding if you just do a side hustle plus your job.
Yeah,
I feel the experience of just end-to-end managing something and managing a business.
But I also think you can start a business in a 9 to 5 way.
Definitely,
it just depends on how intensely you want to work and what you're aiming for. I mean, if I started one cafe and that was it, and I was happy with it, and my idea of success is I want to have the best cafe that I'm working in and building and focusing on hiring people and training them, you could easily do it 9 to 5 and, you know, have a team that you rely on, or 1 or 2 locations. I mean, because so much of my work now is about the future. I mean, if I stopped working on the future of the company, it would easily be 9 to 5 and will be okay just managing 4 locations. Exactly. But so much of what I'm spending time on is just developing myself to be able to, you know, what if we get to 20 locations? What do we do? What if we want to grow this area? What if we want to actually focus on this? And I mentioned this, but I do other things as well. So that's why things are very chaotic for me, but I enjoy it that way. I definitely love more structure and discipline, but that's something for me to work on, to have the discipline of when to sleep, when to wake up, when to say no to things, when to say yes to things. But yeah, it's I don't know. It would I would say no. I mean, anything would morph into more than just 9 to 5.
Makes sense. My last question would be, let's say I meet Fathallah in 2020 now and tell him, listen, this is what you'll go through. This is how your journey has been so far. What advice would you give that Fathallah in 2020, basically? Like, what would you tell him?
It's very hard because there's so many things. Like there's so many. I want to
give him a book and tell him read it as soon as possible.
Yeah, I want to sit next to him and just oversee so much of what he's done. But I think that's the nature of life. In retrospect, there's so many things I could have done differently. There's so many things, if I repeat now, I'll cringe and be embarrassed that I did this, or the way I behaved. And I mean, you know, it's like we're humans. We grow, we develop, we make mistakes, we regret them, we do things we shouldn't have done. So it's just a normal part of growth. I would say one of the key things is just being more disciplined with my time. As in, not to just let things morph into each other. Like, okay, I'm working and then I go see my friends and then I work out in the middle, and then I have a weekend where suddenly I'm doing something, because it stopped me from enjoying any of these things. Like I didn't have it in my mind where, okay, I'm just going to think about my workout when I'm at the workout, or I'm going to just enjoy my time when I'm with my friends. So it's like I'm thinking about something work-wise, or I'm with family having dinner and I'm just thinking about an email someone sent or an issue. Like just enjoy every little part of your day independently to the maximum, I would say. Even the work, like just enjoy it. You know, it could be terrible, but just with force yourself to have a good attitude. It has to be done. Just try.
I think what you mentioned, any entrepreneur would go through, because they start this thing and then you can do it 24/7.
Yeah.
Or you can limit it to how much you need to limit it to.
Yeah.
And then there's costs, because your time is value technically. And if you offer your business 24/7, there's no sleep, so it starts impacting you. So I think slowly your personal equation of this is how much time I want to give to my business versus personal time becomes clearer.
Yeah.
So I think it's a natural journey to go through, but I guess how much you make of it and how much you learn and give input back to that process is
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think one of the key things is, as an entrepreneur, you can get stuck in the day-to-day of things in as much detail as you can, as you're able to, but that will preclude you from growing the business because you're unable to take a step back, have a bird's eye view of how things are working, and then make strategic decisions. It's very easy to be in the cafe every day telling the barista, no, you should have done this, you should have done that. But then actually sometimes it's best to take a step back, not go to the coffee shops for a week, and then look at the process, how it works. How can I improve it? How can I make sure that we're growing for size and for the future? What would happen if we're 30 cafes? How would that system look? How would the finance system look? How would the structure of the finance team look, or the operations team look? If we hire more people, are they going to be trained well? Is there a good process for training them? All of those things are really important.
Yeah, I agree. No, there's a lot to...
So sometimes actually being connected 24/7 in the small details is counterproductive to your growth.
Yes. Even I feel to the business overall will be still counterproductive. You cannot always get positive, like the graph of time and value is not like this for sure. And it will always hit.
And there are so many times where we want to do something. I let someone do it and they do it badly, or they don't do it to the way we expected. But I don't even tell them. Great work. Thank you so much. That's fantastic.
Yes.
Just because I know that person's put effort. I know he's working hard. It's all counterproductive to just constantly criticize. But at some point, of course, you have to give make suggestions or give guidance, because that's how people improve.
Yes.
But also manage when to do this, and when to step in, when to let go, when to accept certain
things as is,
and just like look the other way, because it's gonna be unhelpful if you point it out. Which is a mistake I made at the beginning. I mean, I remember Nick, the first manager we had in the cafes, he came to me one day and he told me, "You're always just criticizing. You're never saying any positives, and never saying good job." And because that's how my mind works, I'm always looking for how to do things better, how to focus on this, how to improve. And when things are done well, I sort of, okay, we've done it well, let's move on, how we can improve this. But now, again, it's growing and realizing that people are at different stages of their lives. So for someone to send a report that you could do in an hour, but they took a day, is an achievement for them. So learning how to recognize this. It's you grow as a founder 100%. And as an entrepreneur.
100%. Fathallah, I think we touched on a lot of interesting topics, and I really want to thank you for your time.
No, thank you so much. This has been so much fun, and I love how we just had a conversation. It didn't feel like a structured
I get you.
These are the questions.
It's the first time I do it this way, actually. And
no, it's been super fun.
Thinking, there's a lot of questions in my mind that I need to choose from, as opposed to bringing some investment banking and you ask them interview so it's the first time of me doing this. I'm like, oh, should the next question be this or that? But
no, it's just the flows, like whatever comes up to your mind, so you can ask whatever.
Thank you
thank you so much. This has been great, and thank you for making the trip here.
No, of course.